Thank you very much, everybody, for joining the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines, and from Pennsylvania, I have Jeff Revilla from Poduty. And you're up there near Pittsburgh, but what's the actual name of the town that you're in?
Tarentum.
Tarentum.
How were you going to say it? Because that's a word that people pronounce differently all over the place.
I actually looked it up. I watched a lady in Pennsylvania talk about her town. That's how precise I am with this. I mean, like I told you, I really sweat over the pronunciations. But I'll tell you just before we get into the action, I have to make a compliment to the people of Pittsburgh because I've been up there. I was a catastrophe adjuster for a long time, but in my resume, I was a fraud investigator for a very long time, and Philly was my beat. So technically, the whole state of Pennsylvania was my beat, and I probably investigated maybe 300, 400 fraud claims just in Philly. Now, I had the whole state, and that entire time dealing with hundreds and hundreds of fraud cases in Pittsburgh, I got two fraud cases. That was it. And one was a mistake, and I sent it back. And the other one, the guy realized that it looked like fraud, and that wasn't what he meant, and he dropped the claim. And to give you, and I'm not trying to say the people of Philly are bad, but somebody at work asked me about it, and I said, look, I've been up there. I said, I'll just give you my guesstimate. I said the people of Pittsburgh just seem like really good blue collar, hardworking people, and they don't have time to commit fraud. You think that's an accurate analysis?
Oh yeah, I mean we put French fries on sandwiches, so like we're not out to hurt anybody. Like we're just about carbs and having a good time. You're wearing black and gold, and what we'll say, the people of Philly, they're all crooks and criminals. We'll go on record to say it. Just it's that turnpike rivalry that we do like it so much. It's so great to have this Philadelphia team that's kind of like our in-state rivalry, and it's like a love, hate, respect, disrespect relationship. And but they're all crooks.
Was it Bill Burr that did? Of course, I can't mention any of what he says, but was it
Yeah.
Bill Burr that did? It was Bill Burr versus the entire town of Philadelphia.
Yeah, you won't hear Bill Burr crapping on Pittsburgh, but Philly, he'll lean into that.
Yeah, wow. When he did that, and there's no video of it, there's just audio. But yeah, if you're into comedy, woo, man, make sure the kids aren't in the room. Well, I wanted to talk about this podcast theater because, first of all, thanks for doing that. Because, man, since the pandemic, people aren't getting together anymore. And I've even shot one episode about, we don't sit down together anymore and break bread, so to speak. And having a theater is fantastic. Also a big fan of comedy. I've tried to go to comedy clubs when I go to a city and support that community. If there's local theater, I try to do that, especially people that are producing their own independent plays at the, very grassroots level. And I'm a big fan of all of that local creativity. But when was the moment you realized that it was probably better to have a stage instead of a studio? How did that evolve?
Yeah, it was about 7 years ago. I came out of this platform. People have heard me talk about Blab before. Blab was this first like four in the box live streaming service back in 2015, and it really changed the way people connected online. And it didn't have a business model. It didn't have a growth strategy, and it ended up collapsing under its own weight. And all that community that was there had to go somewhere. And so we started thinking like, how do we rebuild this? How do we reconnect? Because when I went live on Blab, within a minute, 2 minutes, Blab had this social element that would drop 30, 40 people onto my live stream. And and back then I didn't schedule anything. So I did a trivia show. I would go live. I needed 8 contestants. So I found 8 contestants to play trivia with me in that moment. So Blab really brought us all together. And when it crumbled, we're like, what do we do now? Where do we go? And so I started thinking about, well, maybe I don't need a service like Blab. We tried Google Hangouts, Appear In and Hop In and all these other places, but nothing really fulfilled Blab. So I was like, okay, if I can't use Blab to go out to the people, maybe I'll literally go out to the people. And I built this concept called theater in my back seat. And it was two speakers, a podium, some microphones, and some cables. And I could go anywhere I wanted, and I could pull stuff out of my back seat, and I could do a show. I could be with people, whether it was at a park or a trail along a creek. I could hop out from behind a tree and scare some runners. I could be with people again and do that. And, things led to another, and I wanted to do a live show. And a friend of mine had just opened a coffee shop, and he's like, hey, why don't we do a live show? I'll bring in a taco truck. You can do a couple games of trivia, record your podcast. I was like, oh, this is so great. And we scheduled it for March 30th, 2020.
Oh
Wasn't
man.
the wasn't the best day to schedule it, and
Yeah.
we had to cancel, obviously. And I kept refining this concept. I kept thinking, like, if I want to podcast with people, and I think really being around people is kind of my vibe. I like being in public. I like hosting. I like presenting things. If I'm going to do that, I need to figure out a way to expand beyond just, setting my stuff up somewhere or going to a parking lot. And this concept came up to me, and I presented it at Podfest Origins in 2020. It was called the Infinite Seat Theater. And the concept was these small spaces could be used as a way to broadcast to the world and have it really broadcast to the same capacity as like Madison Square Garden. So I could go to a friend's raging kegger party in his basement, or a wedding, a bar mitzvah. I could go set up my podcast anywhere. And with the technology that I had back then, which was I don't know if anybody knows, a little Mevo camera, I could live stream with all these different camera angles from an iPad, and I could broadcast this little party atmosphere to the world. So this concept of the Infinite Seat Theater is really what defined what you see today as Poduty is. It's a small, intimate space. You're never more than 3 rows from the stage, and all the chairs wrap around the stage, and all that gets broadcast out to the world. All that can be watched in Portland, Maine, or Portland, Oregon, and that's what it was. It really was this site called Blab that brought this community element to podcasting that enabled me to build this theater.
That's interesting. It reminds me a little bit of my evolution from did some live sound, not for very long, but I was running live sound. And then after I think the 13th time somebody poured a beer into my floor monitor, I said, maybe I don't want to do. I mean, because I'm really careful. I'm one of those guys where I pack everything really carefully, and I would go to these venues and people were just slam dancing, and it was a nightmare. But I said, I love these musicians, so what am I going to do? And my dream wasn't to have a recording studio, but I ended up moving in that direction, and then no more beers got poured into my speaker, so it
Well,
worked
if
out for
you
a little while.
if you look at all my stuff, for those of you watching the live stream, my speakers are up into the truss. My lights are up in the truss. You can't even see any cabling. I hid everything because I didn't want people pouring beer on my monitor.
I was thinking the Blues Brothers, they started throwing bottles when they didn't like the music, and then they threw more bottles when they liked the
Yeah.
music. It was like, oh gosh. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to talk about the challenges of running a physical space. There's permits, there's acoustic, there's scheduling, staffing, seating, ticketing. Uh, Let me just start off by saying, what was the thing that you underestimated the most first? The biggest challenge that when you walked into it, it was like, well, this is an ambush.
Whenever I would do virtual events, because in between that time of presenting at Podfest and launching this in 24, I was doing virtual events. And very easily I could say, hey, people, I'm going to put together an event. I need 30 speakers. And boom, within 3 days, I'd have enough podcasts to fill up, 2 days of live streaming. It was super easy. I also thought that that would apply to in real life. And when I opened the doors, I had some momentum, I had some press coverage, but almost immediately we opened in June, by July, I was like scratching the door looking for people. I'm like, where are all the local people who love podcasting as much as I do? Where are all the people that want to go live? And so I struggled with that because I thought it's so easy to connect online. I'm like 50 years old now. I don't have any friends. Like, it's not as easy to connect in real life. Even though Pittsburghers are friendlier and we put French fries on our food, we're not going out as much either. And that was a wake up call. That really changed. Like, I was like, okay, I got to pivot here. People aren't just going to come in because I opened this door. They're not going to come in because I've been thinking about this for 7 years and they haven't been. This isn't like going to change their lives. So I had to reposition, like, how do I recruit people? And so I came up with this events called the Pittsburgh Podcast Meetup. Once a month, I invest in buying pizza, I buy drinks, I run ads, and I bring in like 20 to 30 people once a month, almost like I'm doing timeshares, where I'm telling them, like, this is the opportunity. There's no contract, there's no minimum ticket sales. You're going to make 50% of the door. Let's book a show. So I'm proactively, just constantly trying to turn over that room to find new people. So that was a big shock that the real world wasn't like the online world.
That's interesting. And of course, you've got liability, you've got other concerns, you've got, the wake of the pandemic went on for years. It didn't go beyond just 2020. Now, I will say, and I won't go into a big thing, but I traveled extensively right after kind of the end of the pandemic or towards the tail end. And it's so funny how different states and different cities reacted and behaved very differently. I would go to one town and then 3 hours away, the behavior, the distance, it was very strange that, in my mind, I just thought everybody was kind of handling it the same way. So I don't know really. I would assume that people wanted to get back to normal pretty quick up there where you are, where they wanted to get back gathering, and where there's still some areas out there where they're still nervous about getting together, and it's 2026, man.
Yeah, Pennsylvania was one of the states that shut down completely. There was nothing
Oh,
happening for at least the first month, and then
wow.
things started to open up after like 60, 90 days. And I've talked to other theater owners. I've luckily through that program of meeting up with podcasters, other theater owners have come in and just to kind of see the space and get a tour. And they've told me the same thing. Since COVID, theater, small clubs, theater attendance isn't like it was pre-COVID. A lot of the improv clubs, some of the comedy clubs, they're struggling just to bring people back out. And so I'm like, oh,
That's a
great. This is
shame.
the perfect time to open a brand new concept in media. And here I am with marching with my podcast studio. And and it's really resetting the area and trying to work with these other theater owners. How can we partner? We're doing some cross promotion with improv classes where we have somebody teaching here and then also doing classes at other places, just to kind of like blend the mold a little bit to get more people involved, get more people out of the house and into these small spaces.
Yeah, I like to call that full facility utilization. You're really trying to maximize the space. And you're no stranger to marketing, Jeff. I mean, you came into this with a lot of knowledge about how to get eyeballs and ears and attention. And it's just amazing. And I want people watching this to understand that, you go into a unique situation with a unique challenge. You knew all the principles. You had all those great principles of marketing, but you had to kind of pivot it for this new situation. And also, too, you've been on Podmatch for a long. I had never even heard of Podmatch until I broke my arm and I couldn't write anymore. And I said, "Oh, I guess I'm going to start my podcast again because I can flip a camera on." I couldn't move my left arm for almost 7 weeks, and after about 2 or 3 weeks of trying to get guests, which was very difficult because I'd already done a year of all the easy guests I could get a hold of, and then I got onto Podmatch. Let's just say November. But you've been a member 4 years, is that right?
Yeah, I've been on there for a long time, and it's funny because we start to talk about there's like a pod match ecosystem, and you see a lot of the same people cross paths, and it's really interesting that as I've been on there for years, like I can follow some people's careers, and I watch them, go on this show. I've had that person on my show, but then they have a guest, and it's just a great ecosystem. It's a great community that loves supporting podcasters. A lot of them will drop at a moment's notice to be a guest. Like they're that excited about just podcasting. They love it. They want to support each other, be there for each other. Even the review system that's baked into Podmatch shows that you're having a good time and you're going to support the people that supported you. And look at the reviews that they're leaving for each other.
That's right. And for those watching that may not know what we're talking about, Podmatch is like a matchmaking service for hosts and guests to get together. And I think they've got 16,000 members. Alex Sanfilippo, I believe he's the co-founder. And I was in it about 2 weeks, and I saw the videos and I saw the structure. Now I'm sure it was quite different 4 years ago because it's changed just a little bit since November. But I immediately thought, whoever's running this, they know what they're doing, because there was a lot of or deep thought and organization. Because the moment I ran into something, I thought, oh, that's a problem, and I'd go to the next page, and there was the answer to the. I thought, somebody intuitive is working on this thing. Somebody's getting feedback from the members. You could see it. This product of the evolution. So I'm sure you probably weighed in on some of that. Have you had some influence over the change on the site itself?
No, I've given feedback. I'm a guy who likes screenshots and support tickets. So when there's an issue, I will screenshot stuff and send it off to support. I do believe, I don't know when this is going to air, but today is Alex's birthday. So Alex, a pod match, happy birthday.
That's right.
Sing
Happy
along if
birthday.
you're at home. and so you've seen some of the evolution, and there was an offer to be like part of like an some sort of team. I turned it down, but you can be like somebody who really contributes and be a part of the team, and it's a great program and a great community all around.
Yeah, I think that's you mean the ambassador legacy, the
There,
kind of their street PR team, or is there a
there's a
different
street
team?
team, then there's a legacy team, and then
There's
there's a
some kind
couple
of I
different.
saw somebody elite something, and I don't know what that is. Maybe Alex in the comments if he.
Elite are the OGs. They were there like right from the
Oh,
very start, or maybe they were invited to get there. But that's a pretty big status to be elite status.
yeah. Well, for those out there that want to, that are podcasters or want to be, especially if you're doing an interview style format, as a host, I think and I've said this openly before, so nobody's going to be shocked about this. As a host, I think it's if it was twice as expensive, it would still be well worth the money. I have struggled as a guest. I have a book to sell. I'm not a seven-figure founder, and I don't even really like the word founder. I tend to eschew titles and I don't like that stuff very much, but I think you have to add a lot of that stuff to your profile to get noticed on there. So as a guest, I'm not as attractive as I am as a host. So I'm still navigating that. I have a lot to learn there. But 4 years in, how many interviews do you think you've done where you've either been on or you had somebody on?
Yeah, I would gather I'm in 100.
Phew.
Yeah, as far as being a guest, easily easily 50. I don't do it all. I go in waves. I switch between guesting and hosting. If I look at my Poduty in the News podcast, that's 50 episodes coming up tomorrow, and that's 50 guests that I've booked from Podmatch. I did another podcast called My Guest Tonight, which was just interviews from people on Podmatch, and that was another 30. So right there is almost 100 matches that I made just from Podmatch. That
Well,
doesn't
you're
even include me guesting on other shows, which I think the page when I looked at you can look at your history, it had like 78 guest spots that I've been on.
Wow.
So
Yeah, and that helps your SEO, right? Your search engine optimization, because every time your link, and we'll talk about that towards the end, you've got a couple of links that we want people to hook up with you. But every time that gets dropped into a description of, let's say, a YouTube video, for instance, that helps drive people to your site, right?
yeah, I'm looking for those links as well. I'm looking for people who also write out content about, they do really nice show notes. That's an important thing to me. I've also built out my website based on, I had was lucky enough to have Jason Bernard from Calicube on, and he started talking about AI and how these models are learning and they're hungry. They're so hungry for knowledge. And there's so many points in your life that you do things that aren't attached to your name. So a lot of these podcasts that I'm doing, if they don't do great show notes, if they're not linked properly, then Google and ChatGPT, they're gonna have a hard time knowing that Jeff Revilla was on those shows. But when I start to build out jeffrevilla.com and I take a screenshot, I take a summary, I write my own intro and my own summary about what the episode was about, what we talked about. I can link the video, I'll embed the video on my site. If there's a link to the playlist, I link back to the podcast page. So I'm sending all these signals that Jeff Revilla is doing all these things all around. And so if I'm linking to their sites and they're linking back, and I have a series of, I mostly talk about the same thing, live podcasting, podcasting for 10, all this stuff about podcasting. I'm going to become the live podcasting guy, and Google's going to see me as the live podcasting guy. And those little things, or little faucets that I'm turning on that drip back and forth between our sites, those things build up the SEO value. They build up my social graph, and that's what I'm trying to get to. And I did really start focus on that about 3 weeks ago.
I need to do that too. Well, I need to get better on the site with, like you said, the show notes and things like that. I need to package that along with a little bit more of an email capture page too. I have a website, but it's mostly for the mastermind group and the book itself. I do a lot of work on because mainly now I'm doing YouTube lives like this, and then I'll often recut these and give it a second life as an edited episode, and then of course then I'm doing the shorts. But this is also later going to be changed to audio only, pushed through RSS, and then all of the main audio. So that's how I'm trying to maximize the reach for the guests
Mm.
and their links. But you're absolutely right. I need to who in our space and our network, maybe on Podmatch or somewhere else, who's the guru of website related to a podcast? Is there
Well,
somebody in
hands
particular?
down is Jason Bernard, Calicube.
So
You
he
can
is
even
the
do
guy.
I'll give him a little plug. If you go to Calicube, you can do a free assessment of your name or your business name, and
Mhm.
it'll tell you how the search engines, how AI is viewing you and what you need to work on. Of course, he's going to say, hey, we have some services that you can offer as well, but it's a great little free resource. And
Sure.
for me, as far as like, how do I get all these show notes? I think it's kind of, who's the expert in getting show notes? I've been using Cast Magic for 2, 3 years now. If you don't, not familiar with it, you can input
No.
your MP3 audio. It'll build a transcript from your audio. So you'll get that. You'll get your SRT file that you can upload. But
I'm
on
gonna write
top
that
of
down.
that, it trains itself to only give you information about what you talked about on that episode. So if we're you and I what we're talking about today, and I say, hey, give me 6 bullet points that Robert and I talked about. Boom, 6 bullet points. Write me a blog post about this art interview that I gave to Robert. Boom, there's a blog post. Write me an email. You said you want to do an email talking about this episode and why it's important. Boom. I have it set up too, where even like when I do my shorts, I have it set up. They're saved prompts for give me a a social optimized post for Facebook, for X, for LinkedIn, and bang bang bang, I get optimized posts from that content, that I can copy and paste and share all that stuff. So Cast Magic for me is like having a team of 10 editors, producers, working behind the scenes to get all this content to the world.
Now, some of that functionality, Jeff, I have in Descript, which is what I
Yeah.
use to edit the episodes. And I'm also shooting solo content with Descript because, we're on Zoom and there's a limitation of the resolution on Zoom, but it's a higher limit on Descript, so I get slightly better quality for the solo episodes. But yeah, it sounds like Cast Magic would probably close the gap on some of the functionality that Descript doesn't have, because I do like the fact that it gives me a full verbal transcript that I can go back when I'm doing my shorts, and the way my you know hillbilly accent, it'll see some of the words wrong and I'll have to fix it.
Yeah,
But
it'll give you 10 titles for every episode. It'll give you
oh
30,
wow.
50 keywords, tags. It does everything you want it to do, everything you would ask an assistant to do, it can do at a very high level within a couple minutes. It's pretty impressive. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I'll have to check. And I have not had not heard of it. There's so many great I'm learning so many great things. I wanted to ask you too, as far as being true, because you're 20 minutes from the theater's 20 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 2025, depending on traffic. Yeah.
So are you drawing a lot of your in-person people from primarily from Pittsburgh, or would the local community have enough people to support it?
No, I wish more people from Tarentum would pop in. It's mostly, 10 to 20 minutes away, like almost like a donut around Tarentum. People are coming in from all over, but not so much locally. And it's hopefully I can grow. People are the community supportive. They're excited to see us there. They love when the lights are on. I have like a front display window and we have lights flashing and disco balls and it looks like it's crazy inside. And people know when I'm there because there's an event. People walk. You see everybody walking by, sticking their head in and checking it out. But they're not coming in as much as they do come from other towns like Monroeville, Pittsburgh, West Mifflin. They're driving. People are driving to a place like this because they're hungry for this type of entertainment. They want to see more things revolved around podcasting because there isn't anything else that's fully dedicated to podcasting. You might see a winery have a live podcast, once or twice a year, or a brewery. They're not regularly performing these types of events, but this is a space, and you mentioned comedy clubs. It's very, very similar to a comedy club, but designed for podcasting. And to have something like that as a new form of media, it's going to take time for people to understand what this is and how to utilize it. but they're coming in and they're driving. The people who are getting it are driving in from 30, 40 minutes away.
Well, Jeff, give us an overview of what that looks like. When somebody comes to you and they're like, Jeff, I want to have a podcast episode in your theater because I know you've got a very organized breakdown about the ticket sales. So talk us through what that looks like, what you tell them, how you promote that episode to get people physically, or is the promotion on their responsibility? Can you tell us
Yeah.
who does what?
Yeah. When I started putting this idea together of how do I get a space, I wanted to also perform at spaces. So I would, look into hotel ballrooms when they were not being utilized, or, bars and restaurants and all these other places. But you start to look at a hotel or some location, you're on the hook for a contract, probably a minimum spend of food and beverage, probably the tech setup. You mentioned AV, you got to use their guys. If it's union, you got to use the union people. You pay for the chair, you pay for the tablecloths, you pay for all these things, whether you
Oh my
sell any
God.
tickets or not.
That's
So what I
right.
want to do is flip that model on its head, because podcasters aren't making tons of money at this point. We're very independent productions. We're in charge of everything. We have a lot of control and power in that regard. But as far as most people making a ton of money, that isn't happening. So the idea of renting a place or a theater or a ballroom, it's out of the question. So what I want to do is I'm going to take the risk up front. I'm going to build the theater. I got the electricity, the gas, the rent. Don't worry about that. I want you to come in without any worry, without being on the hook for anything. So I don't do a contract at this point. At some point that'll change because as things grow, so do problems. But there's no contract. I don't even ask you to sell a minimum amount of tickets. I want you to get on stage, try the recording. Now, if we go forward, I can build you a landing page. I can sell all the tickets and facilitate all the ticket sales for you. I will produce the event. I will record the event. I'll give you back the recording at the end of the night. And then when you say goodbye to everybody and shake hands, we'll go back to the control room. I will show you the dashboard. Hey, here's what happened. Here's how many tickets we sold. Here's the add-ons you did. If you did like a BYOB ticket or you sold merch, we take all that together and we split the door 50-50. If you like it, most people, even for their first show, they're walking home with 150 bucks. They're excited. Like, I just did a podcast episode. I made $150. They're like, yeah, I'm flipping that model on. I want you to make money, and I don't want you to worry about being on the hook for an expense. So they make money. I make money. The house is making money. They're happy. And if they're not happy, we shake hands. We go our separate ways, and they're always happy that they tried it. But if they liked it, hey, let's book another episode.
And what was one that really surprised you, that really took off, that grew legs when you guys recorded it?
There's one guy, Norm. He's one of my favorite guys. He does Into the Unknown. It's like a paranormal podcast, and he was doing a season one wrap party. And I didn't know, like, it was a newer show, so you never know like how new shows are gonna do. It's not really in our area. It's kind of like the two hosts are like 20 minutes in opposite directions from our theater. So it wasn't like a local podcast, but he's like, I'm gonna go all out. He was like a chef in the Navy. He's like, I'm gonna do this right. So he booked his season one wrap party, brought in full barbecue catering. Like, we had ribs and pulled pork and brisket and beans and everything. It was so good. The place smelled amazing. He had like 30, 35 people come in. He's giving out prizes. He's spinning wheels, giving bottles of wine out. And just, it was a party celebrating his success of getting through a full season. And him and his co-host had a great time. The audience had a great time. And it really showed me, like, this is much more than just podcasting. These are full events. These are things that bring communities together. These are celebrations. This is a party. And we just documented something pretty special.
And you're hitting on something that's very important, because these days, if it's not recorded or if it's not on the internet, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. So you're capturing those moments. I've talked to people that were, not that I'm a young guy, but people older than me, and they'll be like, I wish I took more pictures when I was in high school. There's one picture of me, and that's it. And we're documenting all of these things in our lives, but I don't think we're particularly good at documenting really big moments sometimes, other than maybe a wedding. You see them, or maybe in the Latino community when the girl turns, was it 15, the quinceañera, or 14? That's they spend a lot of money on that, bands and everything. It's a very memorable event, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs. But other than that, A lot of big milestones don't get celebrated. So I'm sure those guys had a big blowout, especially if there were any Navy vets involved.
Yeah.
They're always fun guys. I wanted to ask you too, since it's a hybrid, it's like you're almost trying to serve two masters. You're trying to engage a live audience, which has a completely different entertainment criteria potentially. Like on a I was surprised to find out that most people on YouTube do not watch the video; they're just listening to the audio. And so I changed some things about my format, knowing that now that people listen to primarily, I'm talking about podcasts, of course, they'll just hit play and they'll walk away and they're listening the whole time. So the demands of the passive listener via the internet on headphones versus the person in the audience is completely different. So how do you bridge the gap for that for the host or entertainers?
Yeah, if you play to the audience, you're playing to the people at home. So the
Okay.
people in front of you are going to be a faster reaction than waiting for the comments to start dropping. If you get some oohs and some ahs, like, oh, you might have went too far with that one. And then within, 10, 15 seconds, the comments start catching up to what you said. So play to the audience in front of you. If they're laughing, if they're smiling, if they're happy, if they're not on their phone the whole time, you're doing something right. Your content is matching the expectation of the audience. So I always say, don't even think about the other people watching online, watching at home. The people in front of you are who you're playing to. If you play to them, it'll transfer out to the world.
And the trivia podcast, that was stuff I never knew. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
What was your do you have a favorite piece of trivia of all time?
This is kind of sad. My favorite piece of trivia is the first person and the last person to die while building the Hoover Dam died on the same day, and they were father and son.
Oh my
I just love
gosh.
that one.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Now, of course, do you still incorporate trivia into what you're into the architecture of your businesses?
Yeah, well, I'll do trivia nights. We do open mic nights. Sometimes I'll surprise the people in the audience with a live game of trivia. I am tonight even. I'm recording stuff I never knew again. For that show is actually now recorded for television. So the show itself is about 170 episodes. 70 of them have been on television, and it's three players from around the world. They call in and battle it out over three rounds of trivia, and we're changing it up a little bit because the name is Stuff I Never Knew. So instead of having three players, we're going to have one expert who tells me a bunch of stuff. And then I have to sit in the hot seat and answer the questions to see if I learned anything during the show. So this is the seventh season, I think, of Stuff I Never Knew coming up. This is
That's
episode one.
incredible.
And we're changing it just a little bit to make it a little more fun, a little more entertaining for the local people. Because it airs on Armstrong Cable, which is in 6 states, 300,000 homes. You can catch me on Channel 100.
Channel 100.
Yeah.
That's incredible, and congrats on the longevity. 7 seasons. I mean, that's not small potatoes, as they say. Yeah,
Well, if
that's
you do that, that's the show I started on Blab in 2015, and
man.
we're 11 years into this. I've only done 7 seasons. The joke is a season is until I get tired of doing it. So, last January I got tired of doing it, so we didn't do it all summer. Then I tore my Achilles in the summertime, which is not a fun injury. And then now we're just getting back into it now with this new format, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Kathy Nesbitt, Laughing Yoga, is going to be the first guest.
Laughing yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm already intrigued. Well, Jeff, help me understand too. Obviously you are a live venue that podcasters, wannabe podcasters, current podcasters can come in and have a live podcast event. You've got some do-it-yourself offers done for you and done with you options. Are there any other services that you offer for podcasters or kind of in that realm, like any consulting or anything like that?
Absolutely. Like I talk about this stuff all the time. I will talk to you at any time. If you give me a call, send me an email on the website. I will book 30 minutes to talk to you, see if we're a fit, see if there's some way we can work together. If you don't like that, if you don't like the no contract, business model, I also rent the theater too. So the theater is available for private rental. I just found a gentleman, he does live streams, and he was renting Airbnbs for like
Oh,
two
wow.
days to set up, one day to set up, next day to live stream. I'm like, well, wait a second, how much you spend? He's like $500-600 a day. And I'm like, well, I'll do this for like, I usually sell at $50 an hour. It includes the equipment. And I
That's a
was like,
deal, by the
why don't
way,
you do
Jeff, for
6 hours
people.
here for
Yeah.
300? He's like, oh, he's like, so,
Yeah.
so that's a whole new avenue I just stumbled upon is people who are doing live streams that want a space. They want like a little party atmosphere. They can get on stage. They can control the room, control the show. They can react to videos because there's all this technology built into the streaming. So they can pull up videos, they can react to videos, have the crowd pass the mic around, bring up musicians. They can do all these things to have a variety show and do like a full live stream on a stage.
And $50 an hour. That's why I had to, sorry for butting
Yeah,
in. That's a deal. That's a deal right there,
that's
because
that's
yeah.
Pittsburgh $50.
and,
That's like $80 everywhere else.
and tell me the about the food. So is there a food truck always there for those events, or just they come in when they know there's going to be a bigger crowd, or how does the food work into it?
It's BYOF. You bring your own food.
Mm.
A lot of times with Uber delivery, Uber
Okay.
Eats, they're on speed dial. They come in with all kinds of things. There's a bar and restaurant next door. So a lot of people, the way that the technology works too is every ticket gets you the virtual stream. So you could be sitting in the theater watching. You could be leaving comments if you want. You want to heckle us a little bit, but you could actually get up during the show, take the show with you on your phone, go next door to the bar, get some appetizers, get a couple beers, come back and never miss a beat of the show. So there's all these other things that are part of the technology of the space. That's just one of the ones that's the most impressive where you can just leave and never miss anything.
I love the fact that you don't have to deal with the bartending and the noise of all of that. And hey, give me 6 beers over here and all that. I do know they like their beer up there in the kind
Yeah.
of in the Pittsburgh area. I assume that's still true from the last time I was there.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're only as far as the crow flies, like 3 miles from the Iron City brewery.
Wow. Wow. And great food up there, by the way. What's the name of the street in Pittsburgh that's on the mountain or hill overlooking the valley? It's like a string
Oh,
of restaurants.
oh, that's where the Lamont is. I can't think of the name of the street, but it's up at the top of Mount Washington.
It's beautiful.
There's a main street out there with some overlooks. You can get some great views and some great food up there. Up in I think the Allentown neighborhood's up in there too.
And all of the sandwiches that I got there were top notch. The only places that in the US I would say that would come close to a Pittsburgh sandwich, you'd have to go to New Orleans
Yeah.
for the famous debris sandwich or the po' boy on that great French bread,
Little
or
muffaletta.
or Brooklyn. Yeah, you'd have to, it was amazing. Yeah, I really enjoyed Pittsburgh. I hope there's a reason to bring me back up there. Did you go to the big Pod Fest here in Florida? Because that was my neck of the woods. I'm only about an hour from there. Did you come down for that?
I didn't get to go this year, hoping to get it on the event calendar for next year.
I live an hour away and I didn't go. So,
Yeah.
I was still trying to heal my arm here. And in Orlando, I need to be able to put both of my fists up just in case. So
Yeah, I was
set that
selected
up.
to speak last year, but
Oh,
there was a family thing, and I had to I felt terrible. It was a last minute cancellation. So as long as I'm not blacklisted, I hope to be back, and maybe I'll be on the stage next time.
that would be great. Well, how can everybody connect with you? I know you got two great URLs.
Yeah, obviously, if you wanted like this nonsense I'm talking about with this podcast theater, which I love, it's my passion project the last couple of years. Poduty.com, Poduty.com, Poduty.com. You'll see all the things I talked about the theater. You'll see our upcoming events. You'll just see a bunch of information on what live podcasting is, what it can be. And when you start to look at what podcasting can be, it'll really open your mind of what's possible in podcasting. And we've only begun to scratch the surface on that one. And I was bored Friday night, so I redid jeffrevilla.com. Check out my brand new website. It'll tell you a little bit about me, what I've been doing, what I've been up to. You'll see all my appearances, including this one, under the appearance section. We're doing that backlink strategy where we're trying to build up our social currency. And it's jeffreville.com. I'd love some feedback on it. On either site, you can contact me. All the emails go directly to my inbox. And if you want, you can send me a text. I think my phone number's on there too. You can text me as well.
Very brave, Jeff, to have your phone number. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I've got an email out there, but my phone number, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe my WhatsApp. I might put that out there. Well, Jeff, did I leave anything off? Was there anything you wanted to add? Sometimes
No,
I forget to ask a good question. You might have something for me.
this was a lot of fun. I can keep talking. It's go to the two websites and just check out Poduty.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
I
I enjoyed your podcast. You've got some great guests on there. There was a young lady, and I apologize, I can't remember her name, but she was a recent guest. I got the sense that she was a comedian because she had really good timing. You know, those comedians have great timing. So I love good theater. So thank you so much for coming on. I'll end the stream and we'll continue on Zoom. All right. So I just ended the stream there,
yeah,
and
I
we're
forgot I wanted to
signing off.
plug the podcast, but I was like,
So
oh,
did
that's
you,
a good idea. You should talk